And that music means it is time for the Innovation Cafe with our very own Chris Abel, brought to you by Kobo. Open up. Now, Chris, you are going to talk to photojournalist Emily Garthwaite, who is in the UK, London, England.
London, England. Yes, she participated in last year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibit, but she was different from the rest because unlike the others who are wildlife photographers, she's a photojournalist. She goes around, she captures stories as she sees them. One of her photographs, the one that won, very different from everything else out there in that it was beautiful but quite sad. It was a picture of an Asian elephant that had been caught in India and had been chained to a pillar. And it was something that really evoked a lot of emotion. So I asked her about the story. How did you get that photograph?
I started to spend a lot of time with a group of street boys who I became very, very close to and just started to document their life. The elephant was actually just part of what was going on around me as I spent time with the boys. It was a religious procession that was going on very late at night. It wasn't something that people noticed as being animal cruelty because it was a celebration of the elephant as a god. And I think there's that sort of divide. They see it as a human being, as a god, rather than an animal. And so they treat it like that, having processions, drumming, fireworks. So by the time I had the opportunity to photograph it when I was out of all the narrow streets, it was absolutely traumatized and really, really heartbreaking. And the trouble was, people never get to see elephants, and the fascination and kind of enthrallment of it all meant people got even more carried away, so pulling on the trunk or the tail and antagonizing it even more. But for me, it was the kind of picture of my whole time, of the whole trip that I had in India. It was sort of the pinnacle of it because I felt I'd captured an animal as a human being, which can be quite hard in wildlife photography.
Now, the interesting thing about her participation in that competition, they had 42,000 images that were submitted from 96 countries around the world, and yet in terms of the finalists, you could count the number of women involved on one hand. Now, we've spoken to some of the other photographers before about this issue. I was interested with Emily because she's a photojournalist. She comes from a different area of the world of photography. She said even there, the number of women participating in news journalism is 15%. It's quite low. So I've asked her, because I know she's been exploring this issue, for her thoughts and advice.
Yeah, my partner and I have had long conversations about it. He's a British journalist and a street photographer, and he's got a street photography collective, and he said he's struggled to find female photographers to join. And I know that obviously in Wildlife Photography of the Year, that happens to be a lack of women. I genuinely don't think it's anything to do with women not having equal opportunity. I mean, the wonderful thing about photography is that it is anonymous. It's about the camera and your eyes. I think there's a lot of opportunities that women have that men simply don't have. The access to women-related stories is something that it tends only women can document. I can photograph a child in London on the street, as a street photographer, and I won't be stopped. But my boyfriend, he will be, because it would seem aggressive or as if he was pursuing the child. I think there's amazing female photographers, but I don't think there are enough. And I don't think it's any part to play on sexism or the industry itself. Maybe they're pursuing more fashion. Maybe they're pursuing more lifestyle photography. I don't know what it is, though. I'd love there to be an explanation, but I simply think there just aren't enough women getting involved with it.
Now, staying with an English theme, Arthur Conan Doyle has arrived at the Toronto Public Library, so to speak.
That's right. So if you have an ebook reader, you know that there's the Overdrive system at public libraries, allows you to borrow books, but also the Arthur Conan Doyle collection is starting to digitize some of their rare materials so you can download them to your e-reader as well. And this is a collection at the Toronto Public Library. It's one of the top 3 collections in the world. And I spoke to Chief Librarian Peggy Perdue, who is actually a member of the Baker Street Irregulars. And I asked her to take out some of the rare exhibits that they have. They have the first appearance by Sherlock Holmes in print. It is an unusual book, a digest that was released in 1887 called the Beaton's Christmas Annual that includes all these weird stories and health ads for lung invigorators and things like that. But I asked her to show it off to me and talk about his first time in print.
Now, there's only 30-odd copies of this extant, and we're very lucky because we actually have one that has all the covers and all these ads and things that were at the beginning of it. Arthur Conan Doyle got his name on the cover, and he was very happy about that because he was really still a struggling young writer/doctor at the time. But you don't see a hawk-faced man with a deerstalker and a pipe because, of course, the character is entirely being introduced to the public, and there wasn't this sort of iconic look yet.
They also have a first edition of The Hound of the Baskervilles within the library, and letters that were written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, including this one from 1894. Peggy is going to read it aloud, of a letter that he wrote to his editor.
So glad you like the little yarn. I had thought of what you suggest, but I go to America in September, and that refers to his first trip to North America, and he did also visit Toronto on that trip. He actually spoke at Massey Hall about 3 months after it opened. He came back in the early 20s on a spiritualist mission. So in 1894, he was talking about his literary career, but I think it was 1923 when he spoke about spiritualism. And he got a lot of the local Toronto clergymen up in arms about it because they considered it very irreligious. He didn't agree. He thought it was an important message to give the world.
And of course, I asked Peggy the terribly hard question to recommend a book.
Okay, well, it is a hard question. And if you ask me who was my favorite daughter, I could answer you because I only have one. But with books, I think since we're sort of here in the Conan Doyle collection, maybe the best thing I could do to tell you about one reading project I'm doing this year. I'm rereading the Nero Wolfe stories by Rex Stout. And Rex Stout was himself a Sherlockian, and he wrote this series which clearly draws on the Holmes and Watson stories, but it's set in New York in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They're great stories, so if somebody loves the Sherlock Holmes books and they'd like to try something, not quite a read-alike, but an interesting departure from there, I would definitely recommend that.
All right, Chris Abel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Innovation Cafe was brought to you by Kobo. Open up. Kobo makes it easier to access the stories you love and discover new ones in an instant. Over 5 million ebooks, a personalized reading experience, and points earned with every purchase. Visit Kobo.com today and open up.